Hello, this is Daniel from soundheadquarters.com. In today's episode, we are building white suede acoustic panels for this client's home studio. And here's a before shot, and here is the after shot. And I'm going to show you step by step how we built and installed these. So let's get started. We are starting off by building our acoustic panel frames, which we are doing with 2x2x8 lumber. So I'm just cutting my 4-foot lengths right now. And then we will be cutting our 27-inch lengths. And then this client also ordered 2 1-foot by 4-foot panels, so we'll be cutting those 1-foot lengths as well. And our 27-inch cut on our width allows us to achieve an internal dimension on our acoustic panel frames of 2 by 4 feet, which is the size of our acoustic insulation. So here is a close-up detail of how I assemble the acoustic panel frames. So I'm just sighting down these boards to make sure they are orientated the right way and that there's no imperfections on the front face of the panel. And that is the side that is facing the ground right now. So you can see I'm using the ground as a guide with my drill to make sure that my drill bit is on the upper side of the frame, farther away from the floor, because that side that's on the floor is the side that's going to get routed. And so we need a little bit of space from the screws so that the router bit does not hit the screws once we are routering this frame. So I do 2 screws per corner, and I pre-drill that hole so that we do not get any splitting. And we are using 3-inch construction screws here. So I'm just repeating that process on all 4 corners. So 8 screws total per frame. And I'm going to go ahead and get all of these frames assembled in this exact same way before I'm ready to router. There's all of the finished frames assembled, and now they are ready to be routed. So here is our router with the 45-degree chamfer bit installed. We can see the profile that this is going to leave and give us that nice 45-degree angle on all of the corners here. So the first pass just gets rid of the mass of the wood, and then the second pass gets that nice clean finished edge that we're looking for. So 2 passes per side for every single panel, and we're going to go ahead and get all of these edges routed, and that's what's going to give us that nice 45-degree chamfered edge on our panel. So you can see that's the finished look, and you can see there's still some small burrs left behind from the routering process. So we're going to sand all of that down before we actually upholster these frames. And this is an important step because we don't want this fabric to get caught on any sort of sharp edge that the router left behind, especially considering this is a nice expensive fabric. So we want to make sure that all of these frames are sanded very nicely and ready for upholstery. So we're going to start with the rear side of the panels. We're just using a polyester for the rear side of the panel frames here and just cutting to size, and then we can begin stapling. I'm using 1/4-inch staples, like T50 staples. You can use a handheld stapler, or I'm using a pneumatic stapler. And I'm just cutting off the excess. I like to get all 4 corners first with light tension, and then I can just go ahead and get the rest of the panel frame stapled down there and just cut off the excess so that it's ready for the acoustic installation. There's the Comfort Board 80 made by Rockwool, and we can just cut that to size if we need any little trim there. And you can see I'm using some masking tape just if there's any imperfections still on that front face of the panel before we upholster. So here is the suede. I'm just rolling it out, and it's folded in on itself. That's how it is rolled up there from the retailer. And I'm just cutting it to size, and then I can lay that out on the table and we can get to upholstering. So I laid down a scrap piece of fabric to make sure that no dirt or anything from the table gets on that nice front face of the fabric there. And same deal, I'm getting all 4 corners stapled first, light tension on all the sides, and then here is the close-up detail of how I'm folding over these corner edges. Since this is not a 4-way stretch fabric, there's no stretch on this fabric at all, I have to fold the corners over like this, but you can still achieve a nice flat finished edge, especially looking at it from the front, by folding it over in this manner. And just I like to staple as close as I can to the edge there. That way when I trim off the excess, I have a nice flat finished surface that will sit up flush against the wall. There's the finished panel, and I'm going to go ahead and get all of these upholstered, and then I'm going to show you the installation process. So here is the client's room. This is a home studio in a condo building here in Toronto area. And this is the before. So they did have some acoustic treatment in here, but they wanted to revamp the space with some higher quality panels and something that fit the space better. So we went and got some samples of fabric, and we decided on a white suede. It's a really nice fabric, really happy with how these turned out. And I'm going to show you how we went about the install. So we're starting off just by removing all the existing panels and getting rid of all of the hardware that is in the walls. And once we have a nice clean slate, then we can go ahead and get starting to install these panels. So the first panels I'm putting up is in this little nook in the rear side of the room. And the first panel is the 1 foot panel. So I'm just installing my flush mount hanger onto the panel side, just making sure it's level there, adjusting if need be. And then the opposite side of this flush mount hanger mounts in the other direction on the wall. And it's a very simple system. They just slide into each other, and that's how the mount works. So I'm just measuring out for this side wall since I couldn't get an angle of that interior nook there. So 2 full-size panels are going on this section, and I'm just using some paper there so that the dust from the drilling does not get all over the room. And I'm using drywall anchors and the drill bit that came with the drywall anchors to drill out the drywall, hammering in 2 of the drywall anchors, and screwing in the flush mount with the screws provided in the anchors. So you can see here I'm just installing that flush mount on the actual rear side of the panel. And once these are ready, I can hang them up. So just screwing these into the middle of the panel so that the weight is evenly distributed and that the panels will hang nice and straight. And there's a client helping me out right there, and we're getting these panels installed and really starting to see how these new panels are going to transform the room. And just leveling them out there, just doing any sort of small adjustments with the level. And here's where the other 1 foot panel is going, high up right in the entrance of the room there, where there was an old existing panel. And same deal, we just got that flush mount installed and measuring out so that all of our spacings are equal. This is the rear wall of the studio, and we were able to fit 4 panels on this rear wall with very tight spacing, just a 1-inch gap in between each panel. And so just going ahead and getting all my measurements there. And once again, just hammering in the drywall anchor and screwing in with the screws provided with the drywall anchors, that flush mount. Keep all of our lines nice and straight and consistent so that all of the panels line up nicely with each other. Now we're getting started on the front side of the studio. So just measuring out how wide this front wall is so that we can make all of our calculations. So I take the final width of that wall and subtract 27 by how many panels we had, right? So 4 on this wall, and we ended up with 4-inch gaps on this wall right here. So same process, just measure everything out and make sure that all of our lines are nice and straight. I use my level to get all of my horizontal lines to make sure that when I drill in the mount, that the mount is straight. So that way when we mount our panel, everything's gonna line up nice and straight how it's supposed to and nice and level. Now we're marking out for these ceiling panels. And so the exact same panels that are on the wall, except we are mounting them as ceiling clouds above. So we're using different hardware here. This was a tight space, kind of hard to get a full view of the ceiling installation process, but there's lots of videos on my channel of us doing clouds, and the process is the same. This section of the ceiling was concrete, so we used our hammer drill with the concrete bit and concrete anchors. We used D-rings in the ceiling and some wire tie to connect our chain, and just simple screw hooks on the rear side of the panel. Here is the finished product. It was nighttime when we finished up here. We got another clip from the client during the daytime. That's coming up right now. You'll get to see how this studio turned out. Turned out very nice. There's the finished product there. And you can see nice clouds over the mix position, and the rest of the room treated very well. And we're going to be doing some other small work in this studio. We should be mounting the synths. I think one more panel as well. Stay tuned for more. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned. Soundheadquarters.com.